We had a giant onslaught to kickstart a massive Sunday. There's a power outage on Ken Hinkley, or is there? And why the Dockers and the Bulldogs should both feel awesome about a great game in the West. This is the Sunday Spotlight, shining a light on those games that finish our weekend. Let's go. In a game that mirrored the Geelong clash in quite a few ways, I thought the maturity in which the Saints were able to hold off the power was awesome. I loved what they were able to do, both in building their lead in the first half and holding on to it in the second. And the lessons that the Saints have been able to take away here is partly going a long way in me admitting that I was wrong on the Saints. In the over-under wins column, I had the Saints under 9.5, and not only does that look like it's in big trouble just quietly, but also said what possible reason could there be there to have faith in the Saints. Now, I obviously didn't expect this coming into the season, but what I do know is that it finally looks like the Saints are willing to sacrifice some defensive structure in order to create some offense. And where that confidence is coming is that they are actually not giving up a lot of score on turnover. Their turnover scoring differential going into this game was top 8 in the competition, and I can only imagine without having the numbers directly here in front of me is that is going to become top 6 right now in the game, because they did not let Port score off turnover, especially with turnover in St. Kilda's forward half at all. The way that the Port Adelaide players were not able to generate any kind of transition offense for large periods of the first, especially 2.5 quarters, is a credit to the way St. Kilda was setting up, both behind the ball and ahead of the ball. And it was the usual suspects for the Saints mostly, but the shout-outs are going to come from maybe those, and I don't want to say lesser lights, but maybe those that have been lambasted in the past that need to have their credit given to them. Caminiti is definitely one of those players. Took 10 marks, had 17 disposals, and looked really good across the majority of the day. He stands out for mine. Brad Hill, who I have said at times and did last year that it looks like he's playing on superannuation payments, didn't look like that on the weekend and just played a role nicely. St. Kilda were able to limit the impact of Kane Farrell, Josh Sin and Miles Bergman enough that Port Adelaide weren't able to get any kind of rebound or half-back offensive movement going, and it led them to winning the game. You got to keep in mind that only Carlton and Adelaide led at half-time this round and lost. So what that means is that if you are able to establish a halftime lead, you are going a long way to winning the game. Considering we've got things like the interchange cap and those kinds of things, teams are finding it harder to get in front and then stay in front in big games. And considering that the Carlton, Collingwood game and Gold Coast Adelaide, those halftime margins were single digits. 8 points for Carlton and 1 point for the Crows. That then leaves the game on who's going to be fitter, who can run it out, or of course for the Gold Coast Adelaide game, what whistle gets blown. But that's a whole nother story that's been covered this weekend by me and nearly everyone else well enough. We don't need to talk about it here. The ability to win on the road, I believe the Saints were 3-16 at Adelaide Oval heading in. I don't remember if it's against Port Adelaide just or overall. 19 games at the Adelaide Oval does sound like a lot. If it's one a year for 19 years, that doesn't really add up. So we'll call it overall, and I'm sure I'll either correct myself or you guys will in the comments. But overwhelmingly, the credit goes to Ross Lyon, to the Saints, and these kind of 90 to 70 games are what they should be aiming for. Long gone are the days where 70 to 50 is going to get the job done. Yes, that's how Collingwood Carlton looked. It's not how the majority of games are looking this year. So getting ahead of the times and using their list to the full capacity for the Saints, even though they've got plenty of guys to come back in as well, is super exciting. The optimism around St. Kilda is well-deserved. You'll love to see it. Now let's go to Port, and let's just say I was 125 damn frickin' % correct about Port. Coming out of the Collingwood game, I went, they're in an identity crisis. The leadership is not there from the coach's box to the captain. There is just no leadership at Port. Josh Carr needs to take over. Connor Rosine needs some help, and also needs to get better himself as a leader, and Port can move forward. And I had both Port and non-Port supporters go, Daz, this wasn't a good game, but calm down. Nope, doubling down. I was right, this is a mess, this is a joke. and it's taking the piss out of Port Adelaide supporters. Whatever you think of them, and again, I, in the wild, have not encountered shitty Port Adelaide supporters, and I'm not here to bash supporters, right? Teams are going through bad periods, right? It's why I want St. Kilda to be successful, because the premiership drought, right, is I want fans to be happy. I have had my fair share of happiness. I've had other supporters' fair share of happiness, considering I was 18 years old and watched my team win 4 flags. So I'm good. And by the way, that doesn't mean that Hawthorn can become shit again. What I'm saying is that Richmond winning the flag was awesome. Bulldogs winning the flag was great. Melbourne winning the flag was awesome. Right? I know 20 years or 21 years now as a streak is what Port's going to go through, but if you are going to go through a rebuild, or you are going to go through some down times, at least having something to fall back on. Richmond fans shouldn't be complaining that much because they've been so successful. You're down the bottom of the ladder. Watch the kids, enjoy them, rise up the ladder. For Port right now, they've had to hang their hat on a football club that kept their coach around for too long, is keeping him around for too long already, and are just watching a nothing year go by. They'll beat the bad teams. They'll lose to most of the good ones, and Josh Carr will take over with absolutely zero evidence of a change in game plan, personnel, and Zach Butters is probably going to be at the Bulldogs or Collingwood next year. So, what the hell? Genuinely. Back to the original point though, St. Kilda, win of the round, in my opinion. They were awesome. Now, personally, I don't know where you guys stand on this, but just watching a really good forward just beat the shit out of a hapless defense, for me, is really fun to watch. Like, it always made me giggle growing up watching Bud, and then you've got, your Rewalts, well, both Nick and Jack, but Jack more so probably, Josh Kennedy, Jared Roughhead, all of these kind of guys, is that when they'd kick bags and the media would go, look how they kicked them on. Again, it really bothered me, right? You got to kick him, right? Kicking him is fun. Watching it is awesome. 10 out of 10. Jesse Hogan, you're a freak. The midfield did what they did. It's kind of a boring analysis here, which kind of stinks, but overall, the messaging is that GWS avoided what clubs will want to avoid when playing Richmond, West Coast, probably North now, which kind of sucks, and that is, don't be that team. Just don't be the team that loses to them, right? So, Carlton were the team that lost to Richmond. No one yet has been the team to lose to West Coast. Someone will. Don't get me wrong. I think in my first wins of 2025 video, I had Essendon being the first team to lose to West Coast over there in like round 9. So, I'm still holding on to that at this point in time. But they did what they had to do. Their defense was awesome. Lockie Ash right now is in the All-Australian team, and I won't hear anything about it otherwise. Bloke is a genuine star. Darcy Jones, the kid with the lid, he is so exciting, and on a day where everyone needed to get their confidence up, they were able to do that. After the loss last week, the Giants, they just needed to get some credits in the bank and just beat the shit out of someone. They were able to do that, which was awesome. In terms of bright spots for the Eagles, there were a couple. Ryan Marich is the second tall defender. Look, obviously didn't work because of how Hogan was able to get a hold of, well, basically him and Sandy Brock, to be completely honest. Why the hell they dropped Harry Edwards on the same game that Jeremy McGovern got injured, I've got no clue, but fed them to the Wolves. Not great, Mini, to be honest, but again, the Eagles' problem is the worst problem to have as a rebuilding team, and that is that their senior players were awful. Tim Kelly can't play next week. Now, I don't know what's going on with his family. I don't know what's going on with his personal life. I do not want to speculate at all. I really don't. From a pure, on-screen, footballing opinion, how does he play next week? Well, Bo Allen could come in and play and do that. Noah Long, but I'd much rather play him than I would a Tim Kelly type at this point in time. They're already being, like I said, fed to the Wolves. The Eagles players, just get more youth in there. So play Bo Allen, right? Could Tim Kelly as the sub work? That would be nuts, but that's fine because Hamish Davis looked pretty solid. Gross was awesome. Loved what I saw from him. That goal was great. And the shout-out does need to go to Harley for all of the shit canning that we want to put this guy through for whatever reason. Will he become a superstar? Well, I kind of feel the same as I do about Jason Horne-Francis, to be honest, who was incredible against the Saints. Don't get me wrong. But we have no evidence to suggest that he is going to be the best player in the comp or amongst. That also doesn't mean at 19 years old his career's gone badly. Just let him develop into the best version of him. It's obvious that he doesn't quite have that aerobic ability to stay in games for 4 quarters. He still had 25 touches and impacted with and without the footy. That's all we can ask for. GWS, well played. West Coast, hopefully can learn a few lessons and rotate their youth in. Let's go to Perth. Let's finish this off. Freo went to town in the second quarter of this game, which was awesome. Something I found really interesting that one of the boys in the group chat pointed out to me, I didn't actually realise it at the time, is that Freo had used more than 50 of their interchanges in the first half. So effectively, they came out, punched the Dogs in the mouth, very metaphorically for the YouTube algorithm, right? Very metaphorically, and the Dogs couldn't catch up. Again, a little bit like the St. Kilda game, the margins were very similar and all of that worked out beautifully, and the Dogs just couldn't come back. The thing with momentum, especially coming back late in games, is that you need everything on your side. You do need the whistle. You can't fumble. So the Harvey Gallagher on Murphy Reid with Bailey Dale as the 2-on-1 late was a massive win. That needed to go perfectly in order for the Dogs to rebound, to even give themselves a chance at having 2 goals in the final minute and a half to try and win the game. So massive credit to Murphy Reid for what he was able to do, of course. But considering all the things that you need to go right in order to build that comeback later in a game, the less margin for error you have, they kept making errors. Freo kept enforcing that onto them. Sarong, Brayshaw, these guys were magnificent. Tracy and Frederick as individuals were fantastic for the Dockers. And what I loved about this performance is that it was so mature in the way they diligently went about their work. The Dogs got off to a pretty fast start. Sam Darcy, who had 21 touches and kicked 5 with 11 marks, is genuinely taking the piss at this point in time. He is the number 1 pick. If Tassie could have access to every person or every player in the competition and give them a 6-year deal, he is number 1 on the list. And overall, I don't think it's that close, to be honest, because I always say that the gap between, say, the 5th and the 15th best midfielder in the competition is nowhere near the best, but is nowhere near the gap between the 5th and 15th best key forward. And I don't think Sam Darcy is the 5th best key forward, by the way. I think it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 at this point in time, if you don't mind, and considering his age. And again, the Dogs in the second half, look, they were the better side. They were fitter, they were fresher for the reasons that we spoke about before, and they were able to just make some inroads. Now, I think the Dogs currently, media-wise, are the most underrated team in the comp, considering the injuries that they've had. And granted, I probably haven't spoken about them as glowingly as possibly I should have been coming into this, or as the season has started, I should say they've been magnificent. I am not going to pot them at any point. I actually think Bevo, coaching-wise, had a really good game. He made some moves, some structures that worked really well in that second half. Just couldn't get over the line. They flew to the other side of the country. They gave it their all. They ended up 2.5 goals short with everything that you would assume would make them lose the game in big ways. They didn't do that, and I think it's a massive credit to them. I really do. Shea Bolton is getting better, and I swear to God, if the forward line was the only part of my Supercoach team that was functioning properly, he would be very close to be getting a gig, because I think he's just coming into his own, his old Shea. Post-gather round, I think he could go bananas, but I like the mix of him and Frederick forward. Driscoll was quieter than he needed to be, but Jeremy Sharp on that other wing providing some really good run and attack, and Luke Ryan finally playing a game where he was mixed between back shoulder defender, key interceptor, and he dominated as well. Again, if you aren't going to credit those that you are happy to pot, you are not an analyst, you're an asshole. Justin Longmuir deserves credit for this. I think Freo have settled into the season, and I've said it before about another team, one called Carlton, is that sometimes the hardest win is your first one and you settle. And I definitely think Freo fit into that category beautifully, and hopefully that can take them a long way. Hayden Young played really well in the twos. I expect him back next week to give that midfield the final tweak that is required to take them forward. A really good win, and overall, a pretty good round of footy in terms of separating the men from the boys. The only thing that's kind of concerning me at the moment is that the gap between the decent teams at their best and the worst teams not at their best is growing. And fingers crossed we don't see a lot of 90-plus point games or 80-plus point games in the near future, and especially as we get towards the back end of the year. So that is the Sunday Spotlight, guys. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy cohort. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon.